Scripture reading this morning is from James chapter 2 and verses 14 through 19. James chapter 2, 14 through 19 from the New King James Version. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, "Depart in peace and be warmed and filled," but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, "You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that there is one God, and you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble."
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a full house. You can do better than that. Good morning. If you're asleep already, I don't have a chance. Great reading. Great reading. You're a radio guy, aren't you? Yeah. I have a face for radio too. Anyway. I've always wanted to use that line on somebody else. It's been used on me so many times. We're in James chapter 2 this morning, so go ahead and if you would make your way to James chapter 2. I appreciate being invited here, all the kind things that have been done and said to me. I am so grateful. I wish Melissa could have been here to hear them all. But if you want some advice, if you ever have to move on how you can be away and make your wife do all the work, come and see me, because that's what I'm doing this weekend. That's what she's having to do, and I guess it's a good deal for me. I don't know. I know that what's in store for you right after this has made you a little antsy. You're smelling probably some barbecue, and if you may not even smell it, but you just know it's there, so it makes you think you're smelling it. And it's amazing. Those guys have worked hard on that, and I know it's awaiting, so I'm gonna respect that as much as I can. We are in James chapter 2, beginning of verse 14. How many are former members coming back just for homecoming? Raise your hand. Grateful that you're here. That's a neat thing, and I kind of curb this to that. When I think about coming back home, what kind of evaluation do you make? What's your thoughts when you think back in time to your former times here and what it meant to you to be here? And I hope that's kind of what this lesson does for you. You're on the phone to the HP computer guy. He's probably in India. You call the HP computer guy to help with your computer, and he gives you a series of instructions. You pick up a pen, and you go to write it, and there's no ink in that pen. Pen doesn't work. Isn't that frustrating? It's the only pen you have around you. You're in a hurry, it's time to go to work, it's time to go to school, you get in your car, and your car, a nice new car, won't start. Frustrating, isn't it? Maybe you get up in the morning, early hours in the morning, and you are in so much pain, you can't hold anything down, you go into a fetal position, you find out your gallbladder's not working. Things that don't work get frustrating. Now, you can live without it, but if you got it, it needs to work. And when it doesn't, you double over in pain, and it's bad, and it's got to be removed. We get frustrated when things don't work. And we like to know before we pick up that pen it doesn't work. We'd like to know beforehand so we can plan for it. And one of the things that you do every year, I'm supposing if you're over 40 years old, is you go to a doctor to do what they call a physical. And here's the theory about a physical. Before things stop working right, they send out little clues and signals that if a doctor can get your vital signs and keep record of them, they can determine things are going wrong before they quit working, before they become a real problem to you. So you go to a doctor and he does this blood pressure and this sugar and all these other things, pulse, to determine if you're healthy or not, because your body will send out little signals you can't feel, you can't discern on your own, but your body is sending out signals things are not quite right. Here's my question for you. Does your soul do that? Does it send out little signals that things are amiss? That before your faith tanks, before your faith goes south, it can help you to determine that there are some problems you need to tend to? I think James thought so because these people that James is writing to, he's writing to people who think they're healthy, who think they've got a good, strong, vibrant faith, and James begs to differ. Things are not quite right in their spiritual lives, and he wants to help them discover it. And so he gives them a spiritual. And this morning, for homecoming, as you come back to Southside, we want to give you a spiritual. A series of tests to help you determine, is your Christian life, is your spiritual walk with God as strong as it should be? And if not, what can you do about it? And so we begin James chapter 2, beginning verse 14. And the first one is this, it's really talking about your faith, is this. Is your faith useful? That's question number one. We begin in verse 14. What good is it, my brothers, if someone has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed, lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? Faith then, by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Is your faith useful? This question is, does your faith impact other people? If your faith makes no attempt to serve other people, you're in danger. Because faith by its nature is a social thing. It seeks to cast its favor and attention and influence on other people. But many of us can go long stretches of time without thinking of anyone else but me, my stuff, my family, my to-do list, and all day long I'm tending to my stuff and not giving any thought to someone else. You can even come to church and worship and be at Bible class, and you can read your Bible and you can pray every day without giving any thought whatsoever to blessing someone else with your faith. If that's the case, rigor mortis can be setting in, because if your faith doesn't make any difference to others, it's not working. To think that just how I think or feel about something is enough without any action would be like watching one of those commercials about starving children in China and feeling sad and feeling forlorn and just feeling that compassion is enough. Surely you know it's not. Not just by sitting in Bible class, memorizing 125 verses, feeling properly guilty when the preacher steps on your toes. That's enough. It's not enough. Not serving other people can destroy your faith, but nothing revitalizes it more than serving other people. One look at that judgment scene in Matthew 25 where he says, where were you when I was hungry? Where were you when I was in prison? Where were you when I needed clothing? What do you mean? We never saw you that way. The least person you know, the least brother that you have that has those needs, it's like God. But you didn't help them, and renders a bad judgment. I was once in Des Moines, Iowa. That's a strange place to be. Iowa is a strange state, country, whatever you want to call it. It's just a different place to be. First time I was ever there, Grandview Church of Christ in Des Moines, Iowa, and doing this meeting for them about something about James or something. And I remember there was this college girl there. She had just been converted in Nashville, Tennessee, and gone to Iowa State. So she was attending here. Only about 6-month-old Christian, maybe, that she had become a Christian, and she was up there for college, but she was throwing herself into this church. And so this church decided, here's what we need to do. We've got a family, just had a baby, a difficult pregnancy, and for the 2 weeks afterwards, we want to make sure that they have meals at their house. Well, okay, you know what that means. The ladies get busy cooking meals, and maybe the guy goes delivers it. But, you know, most other people are not involved. But this college student, this girl, just been a Christian 6 months, decided that's something I want to do. And so she calls up. She's never cooked a meal in her life. She has no idea how to do this. She doesn't have her own kitchen. What is she going to do? She calls up a widow of the church and says, here's what I want to do. I want to go buy the ingredients. I want to get everything, and I want to come over to your house, and I want you to show me how to put together a meal, and then I want to take it over to their house. A college student. Can you imagine? She's a volleyball player on their team. She's a freshman. She's got all this stuff going on. But she wants to do something like that in the church. Now that is impressive faith. And I tried to arrange for her to marry my son, and it didn't work out. But that gets my attention. And I know that gets God's attention. That kind of thing, as simple as that, where I am casting my gaze up, and I'm not just worried about my own stuff. I want to make sure my faith reaches out and touches someone else's life, even in a small way. Even if you just decide, I'm going to smile at people because of my faith, because I know I need to. That's an act of faith. And God's looking for that kind of thing. If you're wondering, you're struggling, what, my spiritual life's not going anywhere, it's kind of stagnant and stale, don't go look inside yourself for the answer. You're the one who's lost. Don't go to a convent for 3 months. That's your problem. Serve somebody. Pick out somebody to serve, cast your attention on them, and lose yourself for a while in someone else's life. It revitalizes your faith. And it's one of the signs James says is missing from you guys, talking about his readers. Question number 1. Is your faith useful? At the end of this day, did anybody else benefit from your belief in God? Number 2, I want you to notice in verses 18 and 19. But someone is going to say, he says, I just hear you saying, you have faith, I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works. I'll show you my faith by my works, he says. You believe God is good, one. You do well. Even the demons believe that and shudder. Here's your second question. Is your faith visible? Can I see how it makes any difference in your life? Can someone from the world who works with you, who has no interest in faith whatsoever, see that you are somehow different from your average person in the world? It needs to be visible. I need to see it. Now, the belief in one God was the hot button topic of James' time. It's not ours. Our hot button topic might be that I believe that Jesus is the Christ. But I want you to know this. Satan believes it too. The problem is it doesn't make any difference in how he lives. So if you are a person who believes Jesus is the Son of God, but it makes no difference to your behavior, you're just like Satan. And I hope that doesn't bring you much comfort. It shouldn't. It needs to make a difference. You believe in Jesus as the Son of God? Great. Let's make it visible in your life. Then it needs to change. Okay. Our faith then, the first question, is your faith useful? How does it impact other people? This question, is your faith visible? Can it be seen in how it makes a difference in you? I have this belief that all the young people in here who go to high school and junior high, I have this belief that this impression I formed of you, I'm thinking of Krista over here, this impression I've formed of you over the weekend, if you drop me in the middle of your school on Thursday, I would be able to recognize you as different from the other kids in the world. Do you think that's fair of me to expect that? This is how we talk in Southeast Missouri and Northeast Arkansas. Do you think I should be able to drop in on your work and expect your language to be pure just like it is here? I should be able to expect that. That's the visible difference your faith should make. An audible difference, I guess you would say. We are this self-help project, always trying to get better in our spiritual lives, and I think we should talk different. I think the movies you go see should be different than the movies just anybody in the world sees. I think the music you listen to should be a little different. Maybe. Maybe there's some songs you don't listen to. I don't know, but there should be a difference in you than just anyone else. I remember this time in Kennett when we had the 11 and 12-year-old state baseball tournament hosted in Kennett. And one of the things they did was the ball players could not stay in hotels. Ball players had to get host homes. And that was really strange. So we hosted a couple kids from Farmington, Missouri. That's close to where I was raised, and so I thought that was fun. So they come in, they had a team, Kennett has a team, Cape Girardeau has a team, there's a few other teams, and they're having this tournament. So at the end of this first night, these guys come in, and we're getting to know them a little bit, and I said, well, how was the day? Well, it was very interesting. We were sitting at your restaurant. When I say your restaurant, we had one, really, at Kennett everybody goes to, called McCormick's. It's cheap. It ain't that great, but it sure is cheap. Anyway, so they were all eating there as a team, and the Kennett team comes in. And they're whooping and hollering, and they know the Farmington team is sitting right there. And they said, we got this tournament in the bag. We beat Cape today, and there's nobody in this tournament good as us. We're going to beat everybody else. And they're yelling this and celebrating this as they walk by the table where all these Farmington players are sitting. And these boys were like, that was just awkward. We felt like they were rude. I said, yeah, you know, that's right. I started praying that Kenneth would lose at that point. Next night they come in, it's a double elimination tournament, and what do you know? They played Kenneth and beat them. I thought, yeah, okay, some humble pie here. The next day they were not going to come back, but we heard that they beat Kenneth a second time and they won the tournament. And I don't know what the Kenneth players said, but you know that cockiness you do. And so here's my question. I formed this question after this weekend. Are you as good as you say you are? Or are you only as good as you play in the field? Which is it? Are you as good as you say you are? Or are you only as good as you play in the field? Because Christians, are we as good as we appear to be, or are we only as good as we live in the world? You see, James would say, I got to see it as you live in the world. We answered this question. The Cardinals answered this question back in 2006 when they played the Detroit Tigers in the World Series. Remember that? They didn't give us one iota of a chance, and we whooped them in 5. You remember this? Tell me you remember this. I mean, this is the glory. This is a high point of my life, right? The only thing better is have been the Cubs. But what James is saying here is, you can talk all you want, and you can have Bible class all you want, you can practice and memorize verses all you want, you can sing real pretty all you want, but if I don't see it making a difference in your life, it doesn't work, and it's not being visible. It was brought home to me one time in Battle of the Youth Groups at CRC. They have youth groups battling in the summertime of these physical activities. And we have to plug in the kids where they go. And so we had three kids we plugged into bowling. I'd never watched our kids bowl. I had no idea any of them could bowl. And these 2 kids come up to me and they say, we are great at bowling, put us in there. I said, great, because nobody else can bowl. They bowled a 15 and a 25. Those of you who don't know, 300 is a perfect score. 15 and a 25. And I gathered them together afterwards and I said, guys, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. But you told me you were good at this. And they said, we always get 300 on the Wii. I've learned to do the Wii, and so I thought that would be like, Wii is not reality, right? And that's what I feel like sometimes Christians do. We're good at playing church sometimes. We got to be careful about this, though. It's got to be real and visible. I got to be able to see it. Invisible faith, faith that we say is there but nobody can see it, is faith on the verge of flatlining. You can hear the beat. But when your faith actually prompts you to kick into gear, I'd like to sit back in my recliner and do nothing. No, I'm going to get out and visit that person who needs to be visited. Instead of going to the movie everybody else is going to, you say, you know what, I've processed this. This is not one I need to go to. Let's go to this one instead. Instead of doing this or instead of doing that, my faith is informing, and people can see that it makes a difference. Faith needs to be useful. It needs to touch other people. Faith also needs to be visible. It needs to make a difference in your life. And I hope you don't reach that point where I'm just impatient, I'm just this way, I'm just angry, you're not just anything. You have to be in the process of letting your faith take more and more of your life and overcome those things. There's one last one I want you to notice, the third question. It begins with a section, it goes through a section of about Abraham and also about Rahab. Verse 20. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? Now what's interesting is, in Genesis 15:6, he was justified based on his belief. But this says he was justified in Genesis 22 when he was willing to offer his son. So the question comes, is Abraham justified because he believed or because he obeyed? And the answer is yes. It was an active, obedient belief that caused Abraham to believe. You see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works, and the scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Then he's called God's friend. And you see a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. In the same way, he brings up Rahab the prostitute, justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out in another way. As for the body apart from the spirit is dead, so faith apart from works is dead. So is your faith complete? Does your faith prompt obedience, and together cooperate with God and produce salvation in your life. Abraham was given this promise in Genesis 15, but it wasn't real powerful faith, because you have Ishmael in the next chapter, and then you have him laughing at the promise of God restated, and then you have him lying about his wife and all this stuff. But then in chapter 22 of Genesis, God says, "Are you willing to sacrifice that son of yours?" And he was willing. He didn't have to, but he was willing. "Because you have obeyed me," Genesis 22:18, "all nations on earth will be blessed." What's that mean for you, though? He says your faith must be complete. What does it mean when you get a credit card, when you get a report card at school and it has INC on it? Incomplete. You remember what that meant? The work's not all come in yet. We will assign a grade when the work comes in. Some kind of excusable reason kept you from getting the work in on time. So they put it incomplete. And the faith with God is, I want to be able to see the works come in. When God sees the works come in, that's when He assigns the grade. It's like in Hebrews chapter 11 where you have, by faith so-and-so did something. And the pattern is by faith and then a name, someone's name. And then you have an action verb that comes. By faith, Abraham left. By faith, Noah built. You have all these things. So the question becomes, by faith, what do you do for God that He asks? You see, the first one, is your faith useful? How does your faith impact somebody else? Your second question, is your faith visible? Does it impact you in a visible way? And then, is your faith complete? Does it please God, no matter whether that action required blesses others or you or not? What is God asking you to do in your life that may be unique to you? He's asking you to complete it. He's asking you to rise up and do it. I've looked for years, so I'm just thinking about what kind of thing would that be. Well, there are some parents who have to care for a special needs child all their lives. And God asks them to do that. Now, it's hard for me to say this because it's not me. But if God has asked you to do that, your faith needs to do that. Or maybe it's care for an ailing parent with Alzheimer's, and it's one of the most stressful things you can do. But you know what? If that's what you're called to do, you need to do that. That you need to rise up with faith and do exactly what God is asking you to do. Maybe it's be faithful to a husband or faithful to a wife who is depressed a lot. That's a challenge. God's asking you to complete your faith by doing it. There's this one last example I want you to see about Rahab. See, belief and works cooperate. Belief and works together produce this effect where you're saved by God. And your questions today that we go over and we're going to review here in just a minute have a lot to say about that. But let me give this statement from Joshua chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. It's the statement of Rahab that she made to those spies about why she helped them. And I want you to listen particularly to who believed that the land belonged to the Israelites. And here it is, Joshua 2, beginning verse 9. I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we've heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you 40 years ago, when you came up out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. There was no spirit left in any man because of you. Here's my question. Who believed that the God of Israel was the God of the world and was going to give this land to the Israelites? Who believed it? Everybody. All the inhabitants. All of us shook in our boots. All of us knew. So why is only Rahab spared? Because only Rahab acted on her faith and did something. It's great that you believe in God. It's great that you believe in Jesus. It's great that you confessed His name even, perhaps. But if none of that makes your faith come alive and do work, it's not a saving faith. So here's your question. You've had your spiritual this morning. Only you can answer these questions. Is your faith useful? Is it blessing other people? Is your faith visible? Can it be seen in you? Is your faith complete? Is it doing what God has asked you to do in your circumstance? I hope the answer is yes. Let me tell you how I would use this. When you get up in the morning, I want you to ask yourself on Monday morning, how can my faith today bless somebody else? Ask yourself, how can my faith today make me better, challenge me to improve spiritually? And how can my faith impress God? And then at the end of the day tomorrow, Monday night, you're about to go to bed, ask yourself, my faith today, did it bless somebody else? My faith today, did it make me a better person? Did I strive to get a little more Christ-like today? And did my faith please God today? There's your spiritual at homecoming time. Some people, when they take a physical, have to sit down because it doesn't look so good. Some people do just fine. I don't know how your spiritual went. But I want you to know it's very easy for us to evaluate for ourselves how our spiritual lives are going. If you've never confessed the name of Christ, none of that makes any difference. You don't even have a spiritual life. You haven't been born again yet. If you haven't been born again, you can't have a spiritual pulse. And so for those who have not been born again, I want you to know it's possible this morning. You just confess the name of Christ in front of this group of people, repenting of your sin, and be immersed in the waters of baptism. Spiritual life begins. And for most of you, you've done that. The question for you is your faith living and active? Is your faith useful? Is it visible? Is it complete? If it is, you need to go eat barbecue with great joy and know you're right with God. If it's not, this morning is a great time in front of your home church, people who love you dearly, to get your life right, make it right before you leave this place. If there is an action you need to take right now to be right with God, do it as we stand and sing to encourage you.
Have my affections been nailed to the cross?